and welcome back to another chapter of the Rumcast. We are the pod that talks all things rum with the people who love and shape it. My name is John Gulla, and riding next to me on our shared rum quest, as always, is the Don Quixote to my Sancho Panza, Will Hookinga. Hey, Will, how's it going?
You know, I'm flattered that I get to be the Don Quixote in this analogy. I almost brought this up during the interview, but I was like, no one cares about this. But maybe other people will. Maybe. Now that I'm bringing it up I'm choosing to lead off the episode with it now. When I was a kid growing up, we had this piano in our house, and there was a little wood figurine, a wood carving. About 8 inches high, and it was a little Don Quixote holding his little, I guess it was like a spear or something. He's just standing
a lance.
Maybe it was a lance. Yeah, and he had this hat on. It was nice. He had the pointy beard and everything. Yeah, but I don't know. I always admired this little wooden Don Quixote figure. I don't know who has it now. My sister.
I think that's a famous.
She has the piano. So
yeah. I think that's after a famous sculpture or drawing by someone. I don't remember if it was Picasso's Don Quixote or somebody, but yeah, I also have a big Don Quixote painting in my house that I'm staring at as well right now. So
wow. Apparently
it's a major cultural figure for the both of us. Yes, but look how fast we got derailed.
Speaking of works of art, like the painting in your house.
Oh.
If you're listening to this episode now, you might have noticed that something looked a little different in your podcast player or on social media. We finally grew up. We got a new logo, right, John? It's cause for celebration.
Woo! Claps.
There we go.
We did our glow up. Yeah.
I guess so. I mean, logos are very subjective, so maybe to some people we had a glow down. I don't know, but I know you and I are both very happy with how it turned out, and I wanted to talk just really quickly about just how I don't know. I found it pretty challenging to come up with direction to a designer for a rum logo. And I feel like the conversations that we had along the way of, trying to get to an idea that we liked really brushed up against a lot of the things that people, rum drinkers kind of complain about the category in the first place. We want to avoid lots of those things. But it's when we start the process, it's like, what was our initial checklist of we don't want any of these things. You remember, how did we lead it off?
Well, it was no pirates, right?
Yeah, that was number one, no pirates.
We didn't want beaches or nothing against beaches, of course, or anything that is nice. I mean, hey, and rum goes really well on a beach setting too.
You live in Miami.
Yeah, it's not that, but we also didn't want to limit it, I guess, to just that. There's rum lovers everywhere, of course, and we acknowledge that. So yeah, it was no pirates, no beaches,
no palm trees.
Yeah, no palm trees.
But then you get into the other stuff where it's the first place your mind goes is a barrel. But then you're literally almost every spirits podcast or spirits association or anything has barrels in their logo, which nothing against that, but we wanted something a little different. And also, as you're about to point out, what's the problem with barrels?
Well, because we love unaged rum.
Exactly.
And there's so much good unaged rum out there, and then we didn't want to limit ourselves to just the aged stuff.
Exactly.
So that's a problem. And then there was the next thing, which is we love stills, right? We
stills
like to talk about Stills are cool.
Stills are cool.
But what's the problem with that? Well,
which kind do you put on the
exactly? And so we can't put them all, obviously, and there's even just a pot and a column. But so that was a challenge, and then there was yet another challenge of thinking how do we do this for rum drinkers that drink it neat, like me, or rum cocktail lovers who also equally have a share of rum, and how do you put all of that symbolism into one logo?
I think we're both kind of by nature. Well, I don't want to speak for you. I'm a little bit by nature a people pleaser. I avoid conflict when possible, and I try to find ways to say yes to things and stuff like that. So yeah, it's very tempting to try to satisfy every possible person out there. But at the end of the day, what we kept coming back to was just the root of all rum is sugarcane. And sugarcane looks cool. So why don't we push designers in the direction of sugarcane? And we got a lot of interesting stuff, but the design that we ended up with kind of stood out to us because it can kind of stand on its own without the text. You can put the name of the podcast with it and it looks good. You can take the name away and it looks good. And also the designer did this little creative thing that I honestly didn't even notice at first. My wife Samantha pointed it out to me that it kind of looks a little bit like a sound wave.
Yeah.
And sound waves can be the other thing that like show up in a lot of podcast logos, but I feel this was pulled off in a way to where it's subtle. It's not smacking you across the face. It's not in your face.
Yeah. I agree. I like it too, and I thought that was a really creative way to show using both of those things. And then what's even kind of nicer was as we were staring at it for a while, because that's one thing, the one that we ultimately chose didn't immediately stick out to us, I think, the first day, but over time it kind of grew on us. We're kind of hoping that happens with everybody, because I know a lot of people have already said they like it right off the bat, which is great.
Yeah, thank you to everyone, by the way, who chimed in on social media. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we do appreciate that. But I do think there's also, it takes a little time sometimes to get used to something and your eyes kind of see it for what it is. I don't know how a better way to say that is. So that certainly happened for me, and I started noticing some of the other things in there, like the way that it's kind of shaped kind of reminds me of a globe. Yeah. And you were saying the same thing, that there's this kind of global kind of thing to it that's also very subtle.
We always talk about rum being a global spirit.
Exactly.
And it's got this little like half circle around it that reminds me of the little, when you look at a globe, like an actual globe, that you would have in your home or something. It has that kind of half circle that's like holding it up. So some fun subtle cues in there, and it's good to it took us 2 years to do this, but I'm glad we're sort of taking the next step.
We finally got there.
On that note, though, before we jump into this great interview, you told me that you passed some sort of big milestone, just like we did on the podcast, but I'm not sure what it was.
I did.
What's going on?
I was so excited that I had to share it with you outside of our podcast conversation just a little bit, but now I can tell you the full story. Okay, I sat there the other day with a rum in my hand, and I was like, you know what? Today is the day. I've got to try to figure out how to make a cocktail that I like, because you know me, and anybody who listens to the podcast knows that I suck at cocktails. And I really want to try to up my game just a little bit to get some staples in there. Will, nothing big. I mean, hey, I can make a daiquiri.
One day I'll convince you. One day I'll convince you to like Campari and come over to the dark side.
Ooh, I don't know about that. You might need some support.
You just
there.
got back from Italy, so come on. You loved it. I did not embrace the culture.
I did not have one Campari in Italy while I was there. But so, anyways, I made a rum old fashioned, and
wow,
I know, right? I was so proud of myself.
Like golf clap there.
Yeah, well, I've had the bitters in my closet forever, so I figured I'd have to try to use them. So I had both the regular bitters from Angostura and then their orange bitters.
And the orange bitters,
yeah, which I had to try. I know that it seems like the classic recipe is only the regular bitters, but I feel like the orange bitters, still kind of a dash of those worked really well in there for me. So
yeah, I think definitely like orange bitters aren't way out of the norm in an old-fashioned. I think like a decent amount of people mix those in as well.
Yeah. But what I did was I got the inspiration from a Reddit thread where somebody was talking about Smith & Cross.
Oh, yes.
And there was like, Smith & Cross makes a banging old-fashioned. And now I feel bad because I didn't get the user account name of the person, but you know who we are. You are on Reddit. So they said, it makes a banging rum old-fashioned. So I was like, you know what? I have that, and I have everything I need, and I'm going to do it. I even will, this is the clincher.
Did you get an orange peel?
I did.
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Now I even got an orange peel.
You deserve a true round of applause for that.
Right? I did the little paring knife thing where I pulled some of it off. I twisted it, and I, did the little thing where they kissed the rim of the glass with it, because I saw somebody doing that.
Did you do it with streams of sunlight pouring in to where you can see all of the oils spraying out like crazy, like you see in all the really nice Instagram shots?
No, I'm so not good enough to do that yet. I was just worried about getting it right.
Next time.
But I did it good, and it was really freaking great, and I'm so happy to kind of be able to add that to my repertoire now. And I even did it again with a few days later with a different rum. I used Don Q7. Nice. And it was really great. So, there's a lot there for me to explore, as that is being one of my favorite mixed drinks right now. Rum Old Fashioned, the daiquiri, and sipping neat are kind of my trifecta. So
I find it's really nice to have a go-to, simple, easy to make rum cocktail, just because sometimes I want to drink something cold.
Yeah.
And I may not always just want to, pour rum over ice or something. Mm-hmm. So having something that you just have in the bag and doesn't require more than 2 ingredients is really, really nice.
It's pretty easy and pretty damn good, let me tell you.
Well, you mentioned the second rum you tried was Don Q7, which brings us to our interview of this episode.
I do everything with a purpose, Will.
You set it up. Up. So this week we talked with 2 people, behind the rum at Don Q. We talked to Liza Cordero, who is the new master blender at Don Q, along with Silvia Santiago, who is the maestra Ronera at Don Q, and has been at the company for 48 years, I believe. It's either 47 or 48. She is an institution at Don Q. Has been there since the 70s. Lisa has been there getting close to 2 decades now. So 2 women who have had their fingerprints all over the rums at Don Q, which, as we discuss in the show, is a Puerto Rican rum. It's actually, for a long time, been the best-selling rum in Puerto Rico. Obviously, when you bring up Puerto Rico, people tend to think of another distillery. But if you go there locally, everyone's going to tell you about Don Q. And so this was just a really great conversation, just digging into the production process there, memories from over the years, the kind of evolution of their careers. It's always really cool to talk to people who have been in the rum industry that long, because it's just changed and evolved so much. And we also got some nice little juicy product details there at the end. John managed to throw us a few suggestions there for them. And we were pleased to discover that one of those suggestions may have already long been in the works.
We were on the same page. We were connecting and didn't even know it. Yeah, I thought it's not often we get a chance to talk to people with a combined 70 years in the business, and that really shows with the amount of knowledge that they have and can bring over about their craft. Yeah. Fantastic. Also, just to talk to great people as we usually do. It's so nice that as we continue this podcast, Will, and we talk to more and more people, it feels to me like all the people we talk to that are in rum are such great people. And that is just it feels like such a luxury to be continuing to have conversations with awesome people who make really great products that we love. So
yeah, no one's been mean to us yet. It's been great.
And on that note,
I'm super excited for people to hear this, and also the return of the rapid fire segment. It had been a few episodes since we had brand new, fresh-faced guests on the show for you to put through the ringer for the first time. So that was fun. So yeah, with all that said, let's throw it over to the interview now. So we are here with Liza Cordero, the new master blender for Don Q rum at Destilería Serrallés, and Silvia Santiago, the maestra Ronera, at the same place. And I wanted to start, Silvia, I came across a quote you gave for an interview where you were asked to give some of the best words of advice that you've received in your career. And one of the bits of wisdom that you offered up was, don't solely rely on written communication. There are many things that can be resolved by talking it through. The written word is hard to retract and tone is hard to interpret. So I know you weren't talking about doing a podcast interview there, but I thought, what better way to open this up than with a reminder of the power of conversation. So welcome to the show to you both. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Our pleasure. Very excited.
Lisa, I know you just stepped into your new role as master blender, and I wanted to ask, how did you find out it was happening? Was this a situation where the opportunity was there and you kind of put your name in the ring, or were you approached about it? Had you known this was coming for years? Like, what was it like when you found out that this was happening?
Well, it's a mix of everything. I started in the distillery about 19 years ago. So as I was working as the process director, I was in charge of the distillation, fermentation, utilities. Part of my job was to come to the lab and also evaluate the product with the master blender. He started to put some samples in front of me, say, Lisa, smell this. Lisa, taste this. And I said, okay, but what I'm looking in this sample? Lisa, take a moment, take it calm. and start putting your senses to work. So every time I was coming to the lab, and I was finding even more interesting finding those notes in every product. Sometimes also they gave me aged products, because normally I was with the unaged product because I was responsible for that. But that interest started to build up. And once I came to Silvia and I told her, Silvia, I want to be part of the sensory panel that we have in the distillery. And she said, okay, Lisa, we'll start working on that. And suddenly the opportunity came. And Silvia told me, Lisa, there is an opportunity for master blender. I told her, I want that job. I want that job. I want that job. So that is pretty much, it was something that was building up slowly, but my interest was there. My interest was there.
That's awesome. And Sylvia, on your end, I'm sure that's the type of person you want signing up for that role, is the person saying, like, please, me, I want to do this. I want to do this, right? Yeah.
Definitely, yes.
And Sylvia, turning to you, in your background, I know you've been a part of Don Q since the early 70s, which, by the way, is an incredible span of time, nearly 50 years now.
Congratulations.
Congrats in advance. It's coming. I read about how you stepped out of college on a Friday and into work with Don Q on a Monday. But, can you tell us a little bit more about how that all came together? And also, in a culture now that rarely sees people stay long-term with one company, I also wanted to ask you about what's kept you there all this time.
Yes, as you all said, I was studying really medical technology. I was supposed to be working in hospitals, really, but you studied a lot of microbiology in that course. So here at Serrallés, they were looking for someone to look after the fermentation, the yeast, doing tests and doing some research. So they went to the college and did some interviews, and they offered me the position. And in fact, they waited 3 months until I finished my degree.
Wow.
For me to start something that you don't do, you don't see.
They knew
nowadays.
It had to be you. It had to be you. It was worth the wait, right?
Amazing, isn't it? And for me, it was something completely new. I never thought, I didn't even have an idea of working in a factory or making rum. Never in my mind. So it was something new. I was so excited. And as you all said, I graduated on a Friday, and on Monday I was already working here. Next question that you asked, that is why for so many years? Because there is something new every day, even after 48 years being here.
Wow. That's definitely true.
You fell in love with the process. I did. I escaped from the laboratory when I was working.
It sounds like a movie plot.
And I began asking questions, walking around the stills, the columns, smelling and asking questions. And they were explaining those people that were here for many, many years. They were wonderful. They began explaining everything to me. I was very young, remember. I didn't present like a threat to them. They just saw this young girl who wants to learn. Let me talk about what we do here, what I do here. So they began explaining, and I began learning.
I feel like that's a good kind of culture to have. I feel like I've heard stories with plenty of other places where that kind of curiosity, know, wouldn't be encouraged necessarily. So that's good to hear.
Yes.
Just hearing the infectious excitement that you all have, it's easy to see why you've been able to be there that long and still be so excited. Is you're working with each other too, right? So
yes.
Let's stop to think about this. There's almost 70 years of experience between you two here. Yeah. That's just pretty amazing. And
that's a lot of rum.
All have worked. Yes, that is a lot of rum.
Yeah, we have a great chemistry. Since I started working here in the distillery, Silvia has always been there for me, and we have talked a lot. Every time that we maybe have some opportunities or issues, Silvia, what do you think? And we share a lot of information. And now that I am also in this position, I am more than blessed to be under her wing. So,
Silvia, I was going to ask you really quickly to go back. You mentioned when you started, you were coming in to do, research around yeast and things like that. When research like that is being done at the distillery, what sorts of things are you looking for? What are you trying to find out? And does that type of research, is that still continuing to this day? Is there always something being, new learnings trying to find and things like that?
Yes, it's correct. Let me tell you, one of the things that at the very beginning I started working with was with other strains of yeast. We have our own yeast. We don't buy yeast from companies. Back in 1934, there were some excellent doctors who came and recovered many different strains of yeast, and they did their investigations. So at the end, they chose this specific strain, and it is still the one that we are using today. So one of the things that you do, and we still do, is looking to see if there is something different, something new, a new strain that could give us something better. I can tell you, and I always say that the yeast is my querendona, my noble one, because it's a noble strain. Our yeast, it's wonderful. And after so many years, of course, as any living organism, it suffers changes in its profile. But we send samples at least every 2 years to specific laboratories to check the genetic profile to be sure that it's still working. Even though we know that it's still working okay, because every day we see the fermentation processing, and it's great. It gives an excellent efficiency. It's a cell that withstands difficult environments, and it gives such an excellent profile, sensory profile. That's that's the base for later on during the distillation, aging, and blending. That's the base
part.
Yeah.
The key part.
Yeah, it's not something we think about very often in terms of long-term changes, genetic changes in yeast, almost like blend drift, right? With your rum, when you blend and over time it can drift, there's almost a yeast drift, right?
Right.
That's interesting. I hadn't even considered that you really are, if you're trying to maintain that profile of yeast, you have to check on it over time,
Yes,
right?
we have to.
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah, no, that is fascinating. And Lisa, I know your background was in science as well. I think you studied chemical engineering, if I read correctly.
Yes, chemical engineer. I wanted to be a chemical engineer since I was in 9th grade.
Oh, really? I'm
Yes.
always jealous of the people who figured out their career path so young. That's so cool to me. So you wanted to be a chemical engineer.
Yes.
How did you end up getting into rum? Did it just occur to you one day? How did the opportunity come about?
Well, when I graduated from college, I started working in the petrochemical industry. So a lot of distillation training was, I got a lot of distillation training there, because in the petrochemicals, everything is distillation. So after that, I went to the biotech. I tried that world, but Serrallés had an opening at that time, and I sent my resume. And I remember that interview. They were saying me, how do you know about distillation? And what about your nose? And I said, nose? But I am a chemical engineer. What it has to do with the nose? And the engineer that interviewed me told me, because when you work in rum, you have to have a good nose. So he, but why? Yeah, because you have to smell. And he started to talk in that lovely way that I said, oh my God, there is another aspect in chemical engineering.
Right.
And
this is different. This is different than dealing with petroleum.
Yes, I make gasoline, I make chemicals, I make medicines.
It tastes better.
Oh, definitely.
And smells better, yeah.
Right, definitely. So when he started to talk like that, he said, oh my God, there is another aspect. And as soon as they call me, do you they make the offer, I said, obviously I want to be there. Yeah. And I have been here since 19 years ago. So I stayed here. I love being here. And I love starting here, so everything is the way it's supposed to be in my career right now.
So Silvia, I've heard you mention before that there's a perception among people in your role specifically that you just drink rum all day, every day, and that's what you do.
Yeah, that's. I have several anecdotes about that. But yes, people think that we are drinking rum all the time. And if we do that, imagine at 7 a.m. in the morning, the first thing that you do is taste the production of the process for hours. So if you really drink it at the end of 1 or 2 hours, you will be knocked out. So impossible. But yes, that happens. And I always remember this secretary that we met we were in the restroom, and I was trying contact lenses. So my eyes were very, very red. And I began just saying, oh, these lenses are killing me. Look, my eyes. And she looked at me so shyly. She told me, oh, Silvia, I thought that your eyes were so red because you were drinking rum. In reality, that was the first time that I think, oh my God, they think that they're drinking rum. Impossible. But yes, some people think about that here.
Yeah. So, well, then for both of you, I guess, what does a typical day in the life of a Maestra Ronera look like? And what are some of the functions that people may see less of, but are still really extremely important for you and the success of the company and the rum?
Well, at least for me, I start at 7 a.m. I get to the lab, we prepare the standards, and then we start receiving samples from all around the plant, from distillation. We receive samples from the fermentation lab because they do pilot fermentations, and that's the first point in which we start monitoring our process. Mm-hmm. We get some aging samples because we monitor our aging. We get from the blending area where the formulation gets where we make the formulation. They get us samples for approval. So at least I am like 7 to 8 hours daily evaluating. And after that, then I sit down and do all the calculations, all the other work that I need to do as a master blender.
So long days. Wow.
Yes, very long days.
It's a long day. And because she also goes to the places, to the rectifying unit where they are making the rums and checking on the processes. She also goes to the distillation area also. Remember, that was her heart was at the very beginning.
Yeah, the heart is, you have a part of me there. That they are taking good care of the distillation system. And you asked something that I didn't answer, and I'm going to take advantage of what Liza said, is that we still do a lot of research. For example, when we purchase the molasses or we receive our molasses, we always perform pilot tests, taking on ways in which we can extract all the sugar that those molasses have to produce the rum. And we have 2 laboratory areas, and they have a lot of work in that, looking for better ways of doing things. Not always work, they sometimes suggest, hey, we can do this or that, but not necessarily we go that way. Remember that it's really important in this business. What I am blending today was distilled in some cases 8 years, 10 years back.
Right.
So changes must be taken care carefully because you don't want really to mess with that. So changes are slow, but we have to look for changes to improve processes, controls, mostly controls. You want to control the process to be sure that you will always have the same end product. So, and that's what our focus is most of the time.
You mentioned molasses there, and I think I'd read that part of your job is like making the molasses purchases and everything. And I know just from talking with distilleries all over the Caribbean that sourcing molasses has really changed a lot, over the past few decades. And I imagine it's changed enormously since the 70s when you first arrived. And so I was kind of curious to ask you just what, for people who are just rum consumers and aren't thinking about molasses all the time, what are the challenges right now with sourcing molasses that causes you to, need to be testing and checking and doing all this stuff?
Yes, you have to be very careful because remember, molasses is a byproduct of the sugar production. So most of the sugar producers, they are looking for efficiencies in their processes. So the molasses that they have not necessarily are the best one.
Right.
So one of the things that we as a company, we do is we have our origins already determined. We don't purchase molasses from any place. No, because not all molasses are good for rum production.
Right.
And that's important. So we have certain origins. We use a broker to purchase the molasses, and that broker knows by heart what our requirements are. So they know, they help us get the contracts, long-term contracts, to be sure. And we use two types of molasses. One of the molasses, because the regular blackstrap not necessarily is available all the time with the quality that we want, that we need. So what we do is we went to the producers, to the mills, and told them, hey, don't take any sugar from it. I am going to pay as sugar your molasses, but don't separate the sugar. Just invert it, and that's the molasses. It's more expensive, but I ensure that origin. I ensure that volume. So that's the way in which we deal with the supply of molasses.
So essentially the challenge you're pointing out here is that if you're a sugar mill, your mission is to create as much sugar as possible to get that out of the molasses.
Yeah. Yes.
As a distillery, you need there to be some levels of sugar in the molasses for fermentation. So you're trying to, it's a really interesting kind of dynamic there. And also when you started, was there still Puerto Rican molasses being used at that point? Was the sugar industry still kind of thriving in the 70s?
Yes, and that's one of the good things of being here for so many years.
Yes.
I paid with my little arrugas. But I've seen so much and so many changes. And yes, at the very beginning when I started here, we had the sugar mill in front of us. And those first years, we were receiving the molasses right from the mill in front. So that's when I visited the factory and learned how they did the things. Of course, the sugars were controlled less tightly than in other mills.
Okay.
So the molasses were really good. Nowadays, it's different, as you had said. About 1975, there was no more sugar produced here in the island, so there were no more molasses available in the island, at least for our volume demand. So we ended purchasing molasses from other countries. That's how we learned how to select the origins. We learned with tears,
Right.
I can tell you that at the very beginning, there were some sources that were awful. They were terrible for rum production. So that's how we learned. No. We have to be sure.
Try it out. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that these molasses are good. And as soon as we received one of the shipments, the first thing, as Liza said, is doing the private fermentation, and we smell that product after distillation. We distill that at the laboratory and smell it and do the tests to be sure that it's giving us exactly what we need.
Yeah, that's such a fascinating side of the process. I'm sure it keeps you busy. Lisa, I want to turn to one of your focuses in your new role is developing new products and expressions, which is very exciting, to rum drinkers out there. And I wanted to ask, how do you approach that? Do you step into this role with like a bunch of ideas of things like you want to try, or do you step in and there are already ideas that the company has come up with, and they're more so saying like, make us something in this direction? What does kind of that creative process look like with coming up with new rum expressions?
Well, it's a mix of both things. First, we have our marketing people that are the ones that are listening outside to know how the market is changing. Many people like rum, and rum has changed so much since we started. So we have a lot of options out there. So we always have to be ahead and watching out what is famous now, or what are people liking. So marketing gives us a lot of feedback, and we have some ideas on the table. We discuss them also. We as besides being a master blender, I'm also a client.
Okay, yeah.
I know what I like, and I go out to places, and sometimes I go to places that say, how do you like your Don Q? Or what would you like to see new in Don Q? So I also do my own
conducting your own market research.
Yes. So, and when we meet, because we do have meetings frequently to talk about that, then we throw everything on the table, and we decide which things are what we're going to pursue first. But nothing is out of the table. It's maybe priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. So we focus on what really the market needs now, but leaving on the table other ideas. Yes.
We have some things we might want to throw on the table.
We're open to that. Obviously, we're open. Well, you're talking with the right people.
We'll get there.
You're talking with the best rum.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I do want to get a little bit into the process of how rum is made without getting into, the top secret recipes and things like that. But, I've read a little bit about the production process. And, one of the things I think is so interesting about rum are the different ways that different traditions approach that production process and what types of rum they're making and how they're blending and everything. So kind of at a high level, my understanding is that for Don Q, you make lighter rums and heavier rums, and then you can blend those in different proportions to give yourself kind of a variety of base rums to work with. So really the question I want to ask is just, what is the difference in how your light rums and heavy rums are produced? Like, what makes one light and what makes one heavy to you?
It's the stages of distillation. A heavy rum is a single distillation. It's the same fermentation, but obviously you're not having so many columns, so many congeners stay in your product. That is what we call heavy. We make heavy in an old column. It's about from the 1930s.
I think it's a Vendome column still, right?
Yeah, and it's completely made of copper. We still have that column. We make our heavy rum there. It has the same characteristics. So, because it's very important to maintain that characteristic for our aging to take place correctly. The barrel will be with you very generous as well as the product that you get to it. So that is why we are very consistent and very jealous of the quality that we put to our barrels. For the light rum, we have an exquisite, beautiful, marvelous distillation system, which is my baby.
I can see that you started in distillation, right?
It's a 5-column system. It's a German technology. It's very efficient. We make, and I have to say that, we make 22 million proof gallons per year. That's a lot. And with the same consistency, if for some reasons we have some things on fermentation, because I cannot lie, sometimes fermentation has some challenges. The thing is that we can change our conditions in the system and we always have good product. Always. There is no day that since I have been in this plant that we make bad product, because we all have so many controls established that we can just change things in order to avoid the product going the other way. So light rum is a very neutral spirit, which is very, for me, it's like ready to be aged, because it will accept whatever the barrel will give to it.
So then what I'm hearing is essentially it's just the distillation that drives the difference between that. You're not doing like one super long fermentation for one of the rums and a very short one for the other.
Well, we do have other fermentations which take longer and are more with a lot of congeners, but we have our same molasses, the same yeast. So in terms of fermentation hours, we might shift from congeners, but its distillation is shortened time fermentation. It takes about 40 to 42 hours. The heavier is about 60 or more. Okay. So there is some difference in congeners, but it's the same fermentation.
And you mentioned I'm going to get the number wrong, but the number of gallons being produced there every year.
22 million.
22 million.
22 million proof gallons.
And I don't know how many listeners realize this. I know everyone hears Destilería Serrallés and they instantly associate it with Don Q, but there are other brands in Puerto Rico that are coming out of there, like Palo Viejo. I know you do a lot of rum that is sold in bulk and things like that. So I just wanted listeners to know that like that's not all Don Q, but there's a lot of different rums coming out there.
Let me tell you something about that, and it's really important also because people think that even though it has different name, that is the same product. And no,
It's not.
it is not. There are many things that make a difference in those different brands. Your blend is different.
Right.
Your treatment, your type of, that you use some activated carbon to remove some of the color coming from the bottle. The type of activated carbon is different also. It's part of the formula for each rum.
Right. It's not just being like packaged and resold with a different brand. These are distinct rums.
Yeah, that's one of the strengths of rums, and what we talk about all the time is there's so many different ways that you can vary it, and it's so versatile as a spirit. So it's great that you all take advantage of that. I wanted to mention, so we talked a little bit right before the interview about how much I do love the Don Q7. It is a fantastic rum. But I also wanted to mention something else, and actually this is what brought me to think, wow, Don Q is really doing really great things, was you have a limited single barrel vintage that has come out, and I noticed that on the shelf. And I'd seen, I think the first one I ever saw was the 2005, and then there was a 2007, and then finally a 2009. I missed out on the 2009, unfortunately. I wasn't able to find out. I've got the other two. But I wanted to know, can we expect seeing any more of those to come in the future? Should we assume the next one's going to be the 2011? If we follow the pattern?
It is. You can be sure that there will be more. Let me tell you the story of those battles.
Yes, please.
Sometimes you go to the warehouse, walking around, you get samples, and you taste, and you find some special batches that have like this specific character. And that's how the 2005 started. And since then, that's what we look at. So yes, now we are looking for the next single bottle pretty soon. Pretty soon we'll be there. And let's stay there. But yes,
we can't say any more than that.
You can say single bottle because, and those are like small batches. It's unique.
Yeah.
You don't have. I cannot go back and get another 2005. You see.
Right. Right.
So, but it's because we select them because we find some specific character that batch has that it's good enough as to make its own volume separate from the others
by itself.
Yeah. So we can't say we'll have a year on the bottle. We can say that. We just don't know what year.
Right.
Yeah, and one of the things that I appreciated about those bottles was that, we were just talking about how you make light and heavy rums, you blend them together. I really liked how on the label it would say, which type of rum, was in this single barrel batch. Like, I think some were all light rum. There were some that had light and medium and things like that. And just as, a rum enthusiast, just getting able to know more about what I'm tasting is always really cool. So I appreciated that little detail on the label.
For rum geeks like us, that's where it's at. And actually, to complement that, there's also something else that we rum geeks love, which is the limited cask finishes that I've been very lucky to see and have. They're very fun and interesting. And again, for us to be able to explore those type of finishes, I know there's the vermouth cask finish, which I don't see very often in rum. A vermouth cask finish. And then the sherry cask finish, which is a little bit more well out there, but very good. Has that project ended, or can we expect more future releases from that in different finishes? Are you able to tell us? Maybe a port cask, maybe something different?
Let me ask you, have you checked the San Francisco recent content?
The results of it? I haven't been through all of those yet.
No.
I'm guessing
you might find one answer to that question.
Did you get some good news?
If you go there, you will find a double gold.
Wow.
That's your first answer.
And that's the cognac.
Yes.
Oh, that's the cognac.
That's our new baby. Yes.
I just remembered. I had talked to Roberto Serrallés about this same topic maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago, and he was like, "There's this cognac cask, and we've been tasting it, and it's so good." So it's finally come out. That's awesome.
Making its way to us. I'll be looking now. I have to go to my shops and see if it's there yet.
It's not there yet. We will be bottling. We have the lot already prepared, and we will be bottling pretty soon. I would think that probably by July.
Okay.
We'll be going to market, and
Today we saw the label. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, perfect.
Wonderful.
Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit about, John mentioned the sherry there. As I understand it, the majority of your rum goes into ex-bourbon casks, but I've read that you have kind of a solera system with those ex-sherry casks that kind of gives you that other distinct blending component to work with. Can you walk us through how that barrel system works and how the rum that's used in there kind of factors into your blending?
Yeah, that solera, it's really old. It has, I've been here for 48 years, and it was already there many years before, so probably over 60 or more years.
Wow.
So they said a three-tier system similar to the sherry in Spain. And so technically, there must be like some molecules.
60-year-old molecules.
On the very first time that they were used. But yes, we use it exactly as in the insurance system when we are going to produce. We use the solera just for the XO, the Reserva XO.
Okay.
It's an ingredient of the solera XO. It has solera XO that has 7 ingredients in the blend.
Okay.
And one of the ingredients is the solera. And definitely, when we are going to make scotch, we take from the bottom tier.
Mm-hmm.
We never empty the cask. We leave us the volume, and then we refill it from the middle from the top. And the top, we refill it with the best that we find, rum of 4 years or more.
Okay. So it has to be 4 years before it even goes into the top.
Yes, it has to.
In the solera system, is a very slow process. The ratio between the wood to the rum makes a smoothness. When you taste the Reserva XO and you allow it in your mouth, there is the smoothness that is unique. It's something wonderful because it fills your mouth. And when you swallow it slowly, remember it has to be swallowed very slowly.
Yes.
So you can feel the warmth going down your throat and your chest.
It's like a hug.
Yeah, goes to the stomach. I always say it's like it explodes with flavors. And you feel, you are filled with all those different layers of flavors, and it's delicious. It's really delicious. And the solera is one of the, if not the most important, is one of the most important
key component,
yes, to give that special character.
Even when you go to that warehouse, you play like your respects towards when you see that solera, because it's so, it's like going to a church.
Right.
I don't know why. I just shut off. I cannot even speak, because we play like your respect. Okay, you're happening in there many years.
Right. It's a holy place.
Yes, it's a holy place.
So
for me, it is.
I had no idea that it had been there for that long.
Yes.
Do you know, or are there stories behind why they decided to put it in there?
Not really. I don't have an idea. I think that probably, as we do now, they were looking for something new and different to make. Since the very beginning, it has been like that. You know that the Q from Don Quixote comes because of continuous looking for something more, something higher. That's I believe what
perfection.
Dreaming the impossible dream.
Perfection.
Since the very beginning, that was like the guide to the people that were working with the formulas here at the plant. So probably that was the reason why they began with the solera system.
Yeah, and there's kind of the Spain connection as well, maybe a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, I was surprised to know we did a session. I think, Sylvia, you were there with the Florida Rum Society a few months ago, and it was a surprise to me to find out that people that didn't realize Don Q was actually standing for Don Quixote, and they were surprised by that. Yes.
When do we get to meet this Don guy? Yeah.
Really?
It's amazing because we have had the figure of Don Quixote always in some part of the label or the cap. Don't make the relationship between the figure of Don Quixote and the Q.
Right.
In the product.
Anyways, I just thought that was interesting. That I thought it was like very like obvious allusion, and there's still people out there who were like, "No, I didn't realize that." I'm a huge fan. Lisa, I think you had mentioned consistency, or both of you maybe did, in producing quality rum there, which is something that I think of as a hallmark for Don Q.
Yes.
But another important part for me is your commitment to not adding sugar to the rum as part of your process.
Yes.
A large number of rums, well, I have to be careful how I say this, but I know a large number of rums produced in former Spanish colonies throughout the Caribbean and in Central and South America do sweeten their rum before it gets to the bottle. Some are more transparent about that than others, but I know you don't. And I don't really ever see you make a big deal or point of separation in your marketing or talking points, but it really is a big deal for us as rum connoisseurs and rum geeks like us. We want to know what's in the bottle, and we want to know that there is an option for us with rums that are unsweetened. So I just wanted to ask, could you talk a little bit more about Destilería Serrallés, your commitment to that standard and how that impacts making the rum?
Well, in the rums that we have right now, we don't need to add the sugar. The barrel itself brings that sweet note. And I can share with you something that happened to me yesterday. I am monitoring one of the barrels because I'm doing some tests. And I took a sample in January. And I took a sample then on March. And you can see the difference in sweetness. This one was very crude, to use that word. And in 2 months, I can sense the vanilla. I can sense the sweetness that I tasted. I said, oh my God, this is so good. So as it progresses, that barrel gives us that sweetness. So why don't make a deal out of it? Silvia can tell you more about that, but I think that we know what we do. We know how is our rum. We just focus ourselves and telling people and educating people how our barrels are making great things out of great rum. And that is what we bring to the people, we bring to the customers. Our process is so robust, so consistent, that we do not need to deal with additional things to be added to correct it. So I don't know if I answer your question on that one, but we don't need to make a big deal out of that. I don't think so.
That's an acceptable answer. Is you have good enough rum, you don't need to. So
we don't need to.
Let me tell you something regarding that, and I would say, using your same words, we have to be careful with this. But there are styles. There are styles of making rum. That's the way in which I see it. We respect a lot our customer and our products, and we believe in the traditional way of making rum. So when you make a good rum, as Liza said, there is no necessity to add anything else, because the rum is good enough as to give you the best experience.
Yeah, it stands on its own.
Yeah.
So, Silvia, I read an interview where you spoke to the role that intuition plays in blending and aging rum. You described it as kind of a sixth sense. And one of the things that I think is so just kind of interesting when I talk to distillers, blenders, people at distilleries who have that scientific background is when they, like, you can be knee deep in the science of it, but you also kind of have this appreciation for, like, I don't want to use the word magic, but like this unknowable part of the process, just sensing when something is right, as opposed to looking at a chart with numbers and being like, yes, this is exactly right now. Sometimes you just know it in your heart or in your mind or somewhere. So I wanted to just ask a little bit about, when you're analyzing a blend, how much of a role do you think intuition plays? And is there an aspect to blending that you feel like can't be taught? It's almost just kind of like innate.
Yes. Definitely it is. And not only when you have a blend, sometimes you have the blend and when you taste it and you just close your eyes and feel what you find in that blend. But it also happens when you smell samples from the distillation. Sometimes we get a lot of samples from different parts of the system. Because as Lisa said, we have 5 columns. And we get samples from different columns, different extraction points. And when you smell those samples, you already know, and Lisa knows that sometimes I tell her, this will give an excellent
in a barrel. Yeah.
This will give an excellent product.
Yes.
And it's that, it's that mojo, it's that thing that tells you, yes, this is good, and this is, because you have in your mind, you already knows what is going to happen during the aging process. And you can even imagine the end product. And that's not only science, as you once said, it's not only numbers, but it's also a feeling of what you have in your heads now and what you can expect for that in the future.
I guess, Lisa, that's why at your interview they asked about the nose, right?
Yes, that's why. And it's very true, believe me. And now that I am dedicated to this, believe me, every time that I evaluate a product, I do a first pass. And in the second pass, I start seeing some notes of everything else. It's so wonderful to discover so many things in a product. So that is why I enjoy my day so much. There are so many things that are yet to be discovered that sometimes I get like desperate. I said, Silvia, I want to learn everything here. No, you have to it's slowly, because it's so wonderful to get to explore all these types of components of smells of taste. So it's so wonderful. So yes, is the nose is very important, and I hope to develop that type of experience that Silvia has. As when I give her sometimes some samples, I tell her, Silvia, what I'm supposed to be having here, and she guide me through all that, and then I start evaluating and getting that sensorial memory.
Yeah.
You mentioned sometimes, you're evaluating samples for maybe 8 hours of the day.
Yes.
Do you ever kind of have to refresh yourself, or can you kind of does your nose get worn out? Does your palate get worn out? And how do you kind of manage that and keep yourself fresh? And I assume the goal is to be able to evaluate something the same way the first part of the day as the end part of the day.
Right.
So I imagine is a challenge.
Yes. Yeah. So I do like an order. I take the cleaner products first, and then I start evaluating from the rectifying or where we blend aged rums. And at the end of the day, I take, for example, the pilot fermentations. So I dedicate my nose to the priority things. Okay. And in the afternoon, whenever the plant is already shut down because we were until 4, then I start evaluating all the pilot fermentations. But I start with the cleaner products. Yes.
So we know that Puerto Rico is the number 1 producer for volume of rum in the world.
Yes.
And we also know that Don Q is the number 1 selling rum on the island of Puerto Rico.
Yes.
So I wanted to just ask simply, to what do you all attribute that local success to?
I understand that for many, many years, the Serrallés have been working to earn that. Remember, 157 years of history in the island. A lot of time to really earn that trust from the people. And whenever you put effort and give the customer the best that you have
that reward,
that result in return. It's really like that. And remember, Serrallés is not only the process or the products. We try to be part of the life of the Puerto Rican people. We try to give whenever there is a necessity. And I can give you the example when the pandemic started, that we changed immediately. We changed as soon as they closed everything here in the island. We changed our process into making
alcohol. Completely.
Yeah.
And we began giving that product with no cost to everybody in the island. And it was amazing. The line of
I see. Oh yeah. Wow. It was overwhelming.
That we were serving policemen, hospitals, pharmacies, and even poor people that they couldn't get the product. They came here. And
even crying.
Wow.
Our people, our employees, I feel so proud because they came when all the other people were in their houses, keeping safe. They were coming here since early in the morning, preparing drums, preparing bottles, everything, preparing the documents because everything had to go with the government documents signed, and serving all those people. And for the only thing of satisfaction that they were doing something good for the Puerto Ricans, and the company the same. So that's the way in which the Serrallés family have been for all those 157 years. So that's how we earn the position that we have at this moment.
It's bigger. It goes beyond rum.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I'm glad you shared that story. I think I saw so many distilleries kind of really step up and make sacrifices during the pandemic, and people shouldn't forget that, I think. I want to turn a little bit to, you mentioned the number of years that Serrallés has been around, and Lisa, you're stepping into this role at a place that's made rum for a very long time.
Yes.
That has a lot of established tradition and style and sort of ways of doing things. How do you balance honoring and maintaining that with also continuing to branch out, to push, to try new things? And when do you ever reach a moment where you're like, this is good, but this isn't Don Q? Like how do you balance those things?
First, it's an honor to be now in this position that I have a direct impact on our brand.
Yeah.
Besides being dedicated and compromised to my previous position, because everybody that works here is very compromised and lives for the brand. With this new position, I have like a higher responsibility because that is our face. So here in Don Q, we have done everything traditional, as Silvia says. We have our traditional way of fermentation, of distillation, although we have a lot of technology invested in it. But our product continues to be aged in the same approach in terms of the barrels that we use. And the product that we want to produce needs to maintain that consistency, that character. Balance it with the new things that are out in the market. I think that we look for them, we want to compete with them, but we want to make sure that everything that we produce and gets out of Destilería Serrallés is going to stay in the market. It's not going to be very volatile. It's not going to be a momentary thing. And I think that balancing that tradition with the newer things or the modern things, that balance is like the perfect marriage for a product to stay in the market. And that's what we're looking. We don't want anything quick. We want things that get in a shelf. And every time that you go there, you say that product stay here because we made a perfect balance between tradition and modern things.
So I think what I'm gathering from that is if we as rum consumers see something new from Don Q on the shelf, we can expect that won't be the last time we see it, probably.
No.
If everything goes according to plan, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And believe me, again, when we launch a product in the market, it's because we have invested a lot of study in that. We know which market or which type of like young adults or more elegant or whatever. We know what is our market, and we, based on that, start to make the blends. But what is in the market right now? What is modern? What is being used lately? Okay, let me see how can I incorporate this, but without losing my tradition. Yeah, because that is on cue. We have to be careful that we have our own trademark. So,
on that note, actually, so I have a mildly selfish kind of question, or maybe what we'll cast this as is I have something to throw on the table. We mentioned we teased it earlier.
I will get my pen.
Market research, yeah.
So we got some market research here. I'm well aware that Will and I and many of our listeners we're not the majority necessarily of rum drinkers out there, but we have noticed a definitive trend that people like us, they're looking at offerings with a bump up in ABV beyond 40. So I mentioned how much I love the single barrels. I love the Don Q. Really, they're all fantastic. But I would love to see versions of those that might be at more like 45 or 46% ABV. So any chance that maybe that gets onto the table?
Wait for the cognac, because the cognac
hasn't seen it.
I haven't seen it.
Bottle, yes, at bottle alcohol. So It's really the concentration of the bottles. So look for that. We listed. We listed.
They're way ahead of you, John.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're ahead of me. I didn't even ask, and we got it. Look at that. I color me impressed.
So when you see the bottle, you just think, okay, this product. They went to the warehouse, they took a sample, they took it to the GC, and they run the proof. Okay, that is what is going in the bottle.
Excellent. I cannot wait for that then in that case. That's fantastic.
Yes.
And we appreciate that feedback because those are the kind of things that we listen to and put into the new products that could come work with us. So thank you. Anything else that you can give us?
I have my pen. Start writing.
I'm sure we may have to wait and drop off the recording till we'll give you some of our less public ideas. But
okay, that's good.
But before we wrap things up, I wanted to mention, Silvia, you've been in the rum industry for so long, and I think one thing that is good about rum right now is we can look around at not only you at Don Q, but distilleries all around the world and see lots of women in very senior positions, master blenders and things like that all over the place. I'm sure that's something, it hasn't always been that way in the world of rum. There's always a conversation about getting women more involved in the world of spirits. And I just wanted to ask you, how have you seen that evolve during your career? And what do you think are some things we need to continue doing to get women, more involved in the spirits industry?
It's interesting what you say, and I thought that yes, when I started working here 48 years ago, I was the first woman to work in the manufacturing area.
Wow.
There were no women in the manufacturing area. And when I went to different activities, I remember that I looked around and there were no women there, unless I looked to a mirror and see myself.
Yeah.
But you know something? Just exactly today at lunchtime, I was talking to a person who also knows a lot about the business. And I was talking exactly about this same item. And,
oh, really?
And you know what he told me? Sylvia, women has been in the business for many, 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 many years. It's just that they have been doing an important job in the business. The thing is that they are not shown. They are not really, they don't allow those women to be really
visible
or visible in the business. So I think that nowadays is really, this is the time where those women are coming out and they are seeing no barriers. They are just coming out and they give the best that they have. And I am so happy. I believe that it's not only women. I believe that the people, the person, values for their talents and for what they can give to the company. And that's what really we should keep improving. We should allow the people to show their best. Women, they shouldn't feel fear. They should go because we have a lot to do. We have a lot to offer. Listening to women, that's important. It's an important.
Yeah. You mentioned women have made an impact in spirits for a long time. They're not always visible. There's actually, I came across this amazing photo. I think it was from either the 50s or maybe the early 1960s. And it's a photo from the rum pilot plant in Puerto Rico. And there's 3 women who are scientists who are sitting there in the lab testing the rum. It's this black and white photo. It's really amazing. And I just remember seeing that and being like, wow, that's something I would not have predicted happening, in that time period.
Yes. I remember because I visited the rum pilot plant many times. Yes, many times I had the opportunity to visit them and talk to them. In fact, one of our directors here now used to work in the rum pilot. And yes, there were those ladies there, and they had a lot of knowledge of the products and of the technology. So as you well said, yes, they were there since that time.
Since you brought that up, I don't want to keep you too long, but there's something so fascinating to me about the rum pilot plant and kind of the role it played in Puerto Rican rum. And as I understand it, it was essentially this pilot distillery that its purpose was to exist to research rum and share that knowledge with producers on the island, so it would kind of lift the entire category of Puerto Rican rum. So I'm curious to ask you, when you would go and visit there, was it just to kind of like check out, what they were doing, or like what was the reason for the visit?
The visit that was exactly like that. Was just going there and learning what they were doing. But let me tell you something that probably you don't know. We have seen, because of the many years that I've been here, that we have tested many rums from all around the Americas. And I can tell you that 40 years ago, rums weren't as good as some of those are today. And you know why? Because they came to Puerto Rico. They came to the rum pilot plant, and they learned how to make good rum from us in Puerto Rico. That's the reality, because the rum pilot plant was part of the University of Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, yes.
So they were obliged to be open to whoever came to the island and visit and learn. So most of these countries that nowadays are producing rums, they learn a good part of that from those studies made by the rum pilot plant in Puerto Rico.
Even the sugar mills that in many places in South America, they came here to Mayagüez, to University of Puerto Rico in Mayagüez, when they were focused on that, and they took that knowledge back to their countries, and now they are major producers of the sugarcane juice and molasses.
Yeah, actually, I took a trip to Puerto Rico in 2020, and this was right before the pandemic started. It was it was early March. I was actually supposed to go visit Serrallés, and the day before I was supposed to drive to Ponce, you closed.
Really?
Like you were saying, yeah. But while I was there, I took a special little trip to the rum pilot plant, and I just wanted to see it in person, because the big tower where the column still was is still there, and you can even through some of the windows you can still see some of like the diagrams and things on the walls.
Oh wow.
I didn't want to risk trespassing, so I didn't go inside, but I felt like I was in Lisa, you mentioned that kind of like holy place feeling, being around the sherry barrels. That's kind of what I felt like. I felt like I was seeing like an old church or something like that.
Yeah, that's something started there.
Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Before we let you go, we do have a tradition on the Rumcast. It's a special bonus round of questions that we call the rapid fire round of questions. Normally, I think this works best with one person doing it, so I don't know if one of you wants to volunteer for the special honor. But John,
I have a strategy here.
Oh, you have a strategy, John.
I have a strategy.
Okay. Tell us about the strategy.
I think we can do this with involving both of you and make it fun for each of us. So what I'm going to do is we're going to try to get through as many of these in 60 seconds as we can. There's short answers and there's no wrong answers. So whatever you want to say, you give a short answer to.
Oh my God! Okay.
No long explanation. Just one or two words as the.
You got it.
Exactly.
Okay. And if we don't know, we just say pass.
You can always say pass. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Less interesting, but we'll allow a pass. That's no problem. So what we're going to do is the first four of these, I'm going to ask of both of you. And then I'll start calling names, and I'll say who it's directed to, and you'll both get a few.
Okay.
All right? Okay.
All right.
So, Will, you're going to put 60 seconds on the clock?
Yep. I've got 60 seconds, and go.
All right. For both of you, neat or on the rocks?
Rocks.
Neat.
All right. Column, pot, or blend?
Column.
All right. So one column, one blend. All right. Aged or unaged?
Aged.
Both aged. All right. Molasses or cane juice?
Molasses.
That's an easy one.
That was it. Yeah, that was a gimme. Okay. All right. Sylvia, your favorite person to share a bottle of great rum with?
My husband.
All right. That
Good
makes
answer.
sense. Lisa, name a place outside of Puerto Rico you feel is making incredible rum right now.
Yes, the South one, Jamaica.
Always a good answer.
Yep. Silvia, will there be a special edition, like 50th anniversary Silvia Santiago bottling coming out from Don Q soon?
More ideas.
I am working with that.
Oh, wow.
Okay. All right. So we can expect to see that. Silvia, other than great rum, why should people come visit Puerto Rico?
Because we have a wonderful, wonderful sun.
I agree. And the old pilot, you can get caught trespassing like Will. All right, for both of you to end it, is there any truth to the rumor that Serrallés is considering launching a new value brand as a sidekick to Don Q rum, and it will be called Sancho P?
Thank you for letting us know.
No, we didn't know. We didn't know that.
All right. Well, hey, look, the idea is out there, and it's yours to use for free if you want to use it. I won't even claim any.
We have two. We have two ideas.
There you go. Well, thank you all. That was fun, and we appreciate you taking part in that.
Thank you.
Really fun and informative overall, and wishing Don Q and you all, of course, a wonderful rest of the, what would you say, careers?
Yes.
Careers, both of you. Silvia, you're an amazing, almost coming up on that golden anniversary. And Lisa, 20 years almost already for you, but just getting into this new position. It's wonderful to talk to you all.
Thank you so much. We had a lot of fun. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Rumcast. And hey, if you like what you heard, feel free to go over to Apple Podcasts and give us a little rating. We, John, I think we're inching our way to 100 reviews. I think we're about 82 right now. So that 100 review milestone, that's a big one. And when you do that, not only is it helpful for us to get feedback, but it also helps people discover the show. You know, they put us in more places and stuff like that. So if you want to help us spread the rum word, go ahead and head on over there, leave us a review. And also, if you have any questions from this episode, or maybe, you know, you've got your own Don Q opinions, takes, drinks you love to make with their rum, reactions to share, always feel free to send us an email at host@rumcast.com. And John, where can they find us out there across the social media landscape?
Yes, we have covered the landscape at this point, I think, Will, with our social media presence. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We haven't done TikTok, Will, but maybe we will at some point. Maybe we should. I don't know.
I feel like I need like a Gen Z consultant to help me with that.
We'll figure it out. But at the Rumcast in any of those platforms, we do make sure to get back to people there and comments and respond to those, or the DMs or the PMs, whatever the right M there is, but for people contacting us.
Yeah.
You got me there.
Also, if you would like to support the show and get some cool stuff, we're on Patreon now. So you can go to patreon.com/therumcast. That's patreon.com/therumcast. We had our first Patreon exclusive happy hour last week, I think it was. It was awesome. Had a bunch of listeners in there. Everyone brought, we did a bottle share. Everyone
it was really fun.
Swapping thoughts on a bunch of different rums out there. So join on Patreon. Come hang out with us. We'd love to see you there. But yeah, with all that said, we will see you next time.